Today on The Big Story, Hong Kong picks up the pieces after an angry weekend of protests over the ban on masks. Brazil football superstars in Singapore. And waterproof, stain-proof, biodegradable shorts. A very good evening and welcome to The Big Story. I'm Haryanto coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. Now, the weekend saw angry protesters rampaging Hong Kong over the face mask ban that was enacted under emergency powers by Chief Executive Carrie Lam.
Immediately after the ban was announced on Friday, thousands still dressed in their office attire took to the streets en masse in protest of the restriction that was going to come into effect at midnight. What shocked everyone later that evening was the closure of the entire rail system late on Friday night, which stranded commuters all over the city. On Saturday, Hong Kong was eerily quiet because shops were closed along with the entire rail network. When a major supermarket chain and 7-Eleven said they would be closing early, it triggered many to panic buy their groceries, cleaning out shelves and leading to long queues at supermarkets. So yesterday, despite a heavy downpour and most of the train system still down, tens of thousands marched with umbrellas in what began as largely peaceful rallies. But some started building barricades while others tossed rocks into police headquarters. It prompted police to respond with tear gas and baton charges, and dozens were arrested, with 30 injured at the end of yesterday's activities.
We are now joined by Elizabeth Law, live from Hong Kong. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Hi, so
Hi,
nice
Jan.
to see you. Yeah, the last time you were here in the studio with us. And now you're
Yes.
in Hong Kong, yeah? Now, hi Lisa, thank you so much for that thorough report on the tumultuous weekend. And certainly, Liz, if you could tell us what's the situation there like right now? Have operations resumed normally?
Right, Jan. So today is a public holiday here in Hong Kong, which means that people aren't going to work. There are no schools. But the problem is that even though the rail network is coming back up, only 39 of their total 93 stations are open today. So quite a lot of them are still under repair. The MTR network, of course, says that this is because their stations have been targeted and they are running out of parts to replace that have been damaged during this entire series of events. That aside, people are generally coming out. You go to the supermarkets, you see the shelves have been restocked. That looks pretty normal around the neighborhood where I am, which is near to Causeway Bay. In supermarkets, in grocery shops, people are just trying to get about their normal daily lives. The only exception to this is that since MTR stations in main parts of Hong Kong, which is in the CBD area and around protest sites, most of these stations are still shut. So you see a lot more people queuing for buses and things like that. But of course, today, because the MTR says that they were shut at 6 p.m. so that they will have enough time to conduct repair works. A concept I think Singaporeans are quite familiar with, and the trains having to conduct repair works.
Yeah.
What we have seen is that supermarkets and 7-Elevens again are shutting early because they said that they need to give their staff enough time to get back home. So schools tomorrow have been given a directive from the Education Bureau to say that, look, it's up because there might be transport that will be affected in the morning. So it's up to you what you want to do for your students at starting time.
Yeah, and on that note as well, Liz, let's focus on the business side of it. How are businesses coping really? There have been reports even saying that, businesses are looking to move out of Hong Kong if this unrest continues.
Well, this is something that people have been talking about. And firstly, I think we need to take a little step back. That this year, people were saying that Hong Kong was already prepped not to do that well because of this ongoing trade war between the US and China. And Hong Kong obviously is quite dependent on the Chinese economy. And then the protest started. But at the time, you see that businesses was still kind of confident that things would continue as per normal. But because as long as you could roughly predict when and where these protests were going to be, you could make alternative arrangements. But I think a turning point was when they started targeting the airport, and the protests started getting a lot more wildcat, which means that they were showing up in different parts of the city, and it got a bit unpredictable, as well as the fact that the violence was now going up. So I think that got a lot of people really worried, and they were now cancelling events, cancelling conferences, and so that is when people start getting worried. And Hong Kong is quite dependent on tourism, and the fact that 80% of their tourists come from the mainland, and mainland is obviously staying away. That has been a big impact. But to go back to your question about businesses and whether or not they are moving out, well, I've spoken to a few observers, political watchers in Hong Kong watchers, and they all, the opinion is divided. Some obviously say, and I've said this here many times as well, that Hong Kong plays a very special role in the region with mainland China as well, because of its proximity, because of its historical ties, but at the same time, the fact that this is a free, it has a different system, and also they have a very strong judiciary, which a lot of international companies feel very comfortable here. But of course, there are others that suggest that, look, China is doing so well on its own. You have your Shenzhen, you have your Shanghai. You can create a whole new Hong Kong if you wanted to. So businesses have alternatives. But I think for now, I would say that Hong Kong is still irreplaceable because of its very special position and of its very special role.
Right. And Liz, of course, on that note on China, now on Sunday for the first time, the protesters had direct interaction with the People's Liberation Army when they shone their laser pointers at the barracks in the city. In response, of course, the Chinese soldiers issued a warning. Now, separately, China has also branded the Hong Kong protests a colour revolution, and experts expect more hardline approaches soon. Are we seeing China's patience wearing thin, you reckon?
Well, I think it's good that you separated the question, because those are two separate issues. The first one, which is how they shone laser pointers into the barracks. Well, previously when the protests were concentrated around Admiralty, they have targeted the garrison before. This was the building that is just right next to the chief executive's office. But of course, and they have also targeted the Chinese liaison office, pelting paint at it. But this is the first time there is a direct interaction like that. I think we shouldn't make too much about it. It is just because of them shining lasers that the troops have responded. But because even though they have a garrison here, I do apologize that the background is getting a little bit noisy. But even though they do have a garrison here, the troops cannot act unless the Hong Kong government requests for help.
Thank you so much, Liz, for sharing with us a bit more on the ground experience. Really, you are live, of course, from Hong Kong, and again, we want to say to you, do keep safe, of course, yourself and also our colleague Claire as well, who is there with you, right?
And our colleague Jin Liang, the photographer.
And the photographer as well. So all three of you, please keep yourself safe. Again, for those of you who are watching, if you want to keep yourself updated with the Hong Kong protest, you can follow Liz as well as Claire, our two colleagues who are there, on their Twitter accounts. Now, on that note as well, do check out our interactive graphics on the Hong Kong protests. Now, one of the interactive graphics outlines the key moments in the 4-month-long protests, while the other highlights how the protests have not only rocked Hong Kong, but also torn families apart. Now, there's also a video of how a Hong Konger's views have caused a rift between her and her youngest son. For more on Hong Kong protests, you can visit our website at straitstimes.com.